Good day, I am Andrei Alohin, your host of the publishing program, and my guest today is a very special woman named Iryna Rudenko, who is considered the leading cartographer of Ukraine. A cartographer. You understand, I don't really know exactly what to talk about, as I know nothing about cartography, nothing at all. In addition to that, I'm a bit nervous because in life there's always the first time when you face a challenge, and today is the first time in my life that I will meet and speak with a cartographer. Iryna, here's my first question to you. I don't want to offend you in the least, but why do people need paper maps when computerized maps are available on the internet? I have a map of the whole planet in my phone and I can see everything down to the tiniest details. You cannot zoom in on a paper map like that. So don't you think it's time to give it up? You know, I once wanted to give it all up, but not for that reason at all. Let me just say this, we need paper maps. Who needs them? Paper maps are necessary for the creation of digital maps that you have on your phone or tablet. We get images from outer space, on which neither streets nor objects are marked. These photos from space don't show that this is some park in a given city, and this is the Prague restaurant. That is, to create the maps you have in your devices, first they must be created perhaps not necessarily on a paper map, but at least a digital one. That is, the image we received from space must be processed and given the appearance that we are used to seeing, meaning those symbols or abstractions that we have gotten used to seeing. For example, we're used to the fact that rivers are depicted as some kind of blue lines. Yes, but that's abstraction, and it must be created. That is, what we've read from space has to be depicted. Paper maps are necessary for children. No matter how much we tell them that they have some kind of tablet, they are nevertheless not allowed to use them in the first grade in school. This is why they need paper maps, and even the contour maps that we've already mentioned. Yes, you have to draw those maps and put symbols on them. The military needs paper maps. By the way, Iryna, I remember because I was once a Soviet person in the distant past. So was I. Yes, I remember. In the Soviet era, maps were treated the same as radios, which almost had to be registered, and copying equipment, which was totally forbidden. Yes, so maps were something military, sacred, and associated with espionage. One could not just make a terrain map out of the blue, because you could get in trouble for that. But what about now? There are no differences whatsoever, except for the fact that military maps show military facilities, which are not marked on civilian maps. Ukraine, I would say, was the first among the territories of the former Soviet Union to lift all bans on maps. That is, our maps are open. And if earlier, when making a map of Kiev, we used to cut it into pieces and put it together in such a way that the enemy wouldn't find their way through Khreshchatyk, then now all maps, even of the largest scale, are freely accessible. The only thing is that military objects will simply not be shown on those maps. I'll be honest with you, I'm terribly fond of old maps. The color of parchment, all the curls, all those cities, churches, and so on and so forth. I have a dream to decorate my bedroom with old maps, just to lie on my bed and admire them. We're going to talk about my bedroom now. Here are ancient maps of Ukraine. I saw maybe 20 of those. How many of such maps actually exist? There are a lot of them. The largest repository of these old maps is presented in the Lviv Regional Library and the library of the Lviv University. At the time, cartographers published 3 volumes of albums with reproductions of old Ukrainian maps. The first volume was from the 15th to the 17th centuries, the second 17th to 19th centuries, and the third one was the most interesting in my opinion, but the least commercially unclaimed. The map was called the Portoland Charts of the Black Sea. It has a story of its own. Those maps appeared from nowhere. It is unknown where they came from. Those are marine navigational charts. The coastline of the sea is depicted very accurately on them. The maps were created in the 14th century. When they were superimposed on a modern photo from space, they turned out to be identical. Who made them? Nobody knows where they came from. In addition to that, nobody knows in what projections they were created. And nobody knows. There were no instruments besides the compass back then to create such maps. It is not known who created them and where they came from. They're extraordinarily beautiful. They're painted with aniline, or as they call them nowadays, acid paints. They're all decorated with beautiful compass roses. I just love such stories like the mysteries of the sea with angels. What a beauty. Yes, in Paris, in the library, in the manuscript department, these maps are stored in special safes because they're so bright and beautiful. Of course, you can hang them in your bedroom if you have the money to pay for them, that is. But there must be a certain temperature, and you must wear white gloves when you take them in your hands, because the Frenchman who showed them to us treated them with aspiration. But speaking of Ukrainian maps in general, the old ones are works of art. Any maps, not just Ukrainian ones, are absolute works of art. Well, now we say that our maps are modern and accurate. Back in the olden days, they also used to say that the maps were modern and accurate, but it was the imagination of the cartographer. It was a hypothetical idea of how the world looks like. If we take the maps of Ukrainian territory, of Galicia, for example, then there is the Amadat Lake and a city on it. There's also the city of Zbaraj on the map, as well as the Amadat Mountains and the Amadat Swamp. Nobody knows where they disappeared or what happened to them. The city of Zbaraj is still there, but there is not even a trace of a large sea there. But it exists on the maps. Yes, it exists on the maps. It's inexplicable. I'll tell you another story that connects me as a fascinating woman and an equally fascinating woman named Roxolana, whom we know from Ukrainian history. So in the year 1500 and something, Roxolana sent her Turkish marine military guide to distant countries. So he was preparing for the journey, studying some maps that were in Istanbul. She showed him a map of Antarctica. On it, Antarctica had no glacial left, none of the 1.5 kilometers of ice. The subglacial relief is perfectly accurate. Unbelievable. That's the story. Nobody knows where those maps came from. Just like the maps of Portolana. There is a theory that the maps of Portolana were created by the Arabs. The Arabs had some tools that allowed that, but the Arabs, let's put it this way, did not swim to the Azov Sea. They had no need for that. The Mediterranean is also so-so. So these maps of Portolana were ostensibly made by the Arabs, who made their Antarctica, the land of Queen Maud, and the subglacial relief terrain. Well, since we've figured out what came first, the chicken or the egg, that is paper or digital map. In this case, it turns out it was the paper maps after all. It's terribly interesting. Don't think of it as advertising, but I play the once popular Pokemon Go. I walk around our country, and not just ours, catch them, and it's a strange feeling, like being Alice in Wonderland. You live in a world where nothing is real, but you see that world. It's similar, and you live in it. It's especially amazing, and I'm a little jealous of the cartographers who create it all. Iryna, speaking of Pokemon Go, when the game was just released, the whole world was horrified to discover that today we live in the 3D environment. We can see that whole world right here, living in it, not just separately, but we are separate from maps. So is it comfortable for cartographers to live in their world, or is it like Alice in Wonderland, where you're walking and there it is, the map of that horrifying world right in the palm of your hand? Cartographers feel great in this world, because had cartographers not created a base for the 3D image for this virtual world, we wouldn't have anything. Yes, they are now programmers, literally, virtual artists. But they're also cartographers. Yes, they are still cartographers. We were talking about deformation systems. Programmers and cartographers argue who are better, those who wrote the software for the system or the cartographers themselves. as they were the ones who created such detailed maps on paper in the first place. As far as I understand, cartographers feel absolutely comfortable in the modern world. We do, but the romance of it all is gone. Well, I suppose so. There was romanticism. I still have an atlas of the world that is older than I am. There was definitely some kind of element of art in it. And the cartography today. We used to say that cartography was a branch of production, a science, an art. And the last one, art, has been practically relegated to the dustbin of history with the advent of the 3D maps. You know, to be honest, I can imagine someone dreaming of becoming a cartographer in their childhood and working with maps. Maybe an astronaut or somebody else. I wonder who this amazing lady wanted to be in her childhood and how it all turned out. We're going to ask her now. Iryna, I simply can't help but ask you a personal question. Tell me honestly, were you keen on drawing and did you like maps as a child? How did you come to this? I loved physics and mathematics. With geography it was. I knew it well, but I can't say I was in love with it. I wanted to be a children's doctor, but my father, a military cartographer and a ballistic specialist, dealt with higher geodesy at Baikonur. He launched and calculated the orbits of our interplanetary ships. So he said to me, "Well, my dear child, you would worry for every patient and die with them." So he took my hand and took me to Kyiv University. That's how I became a cartographer. And you began worrying on every possible map. Yes, believe me, I began to worry about every map, and I'm glad I did. You think that after those maps that have gone through my hands, but every time something new is released, I'm thrilled about it. On Friday, we released 4 new educational atlases for a new school under a new program. What changes in new atlases in comparison with the old ones? Just look at how many towns and settlements in Ukraine have been renamed. So many streets have been renamed in villages, towns, and even cities. Indeed, I had a country villa on Lenin Street, and today it's on Shkilna Street. So that's changing. For example, we've made a map of natural zones of the world. We knew where the tropical forests, taiga, and other forests were situated. But it turned out that everything has changed. But tell me, is global warming and the effect of declining forests obvious? Very obvious. You know, they love to publish such horror stories. It's kind of scary. When they compare the maps of the Carpathian forests of 1976 and 2016, it's the difference really obvious. It is. So cartographers are the people who say, "We told you so." Look, yes, I don't know how. You can't describe that with words. Words cannot describe it. So we showed it. It was here last year. This year it has all been logged. We have drones now that we can use to take pictures of anything on the planet. We don't have to spend lots of money on launching planes or using space images anymore. Maps don't lie. No, it's true. Sometimes they do, though. I remember that during the Soviet era, some mistakes were made in maps deliberately to confuse the enemy. No, it was not to confuse the enemy. We used to make mistakes when we were afraid of plagiarism. That is in some cases. We portrayed a street as a dead end. We knew that we were the only ones to do that, and we knew it was not a dead end. So when our competitors also made it a dead end, copying our maps, then you exposed them. Yes, that was when we caught them. There was an interesting story about maps and whether or not to make mistakes. Moscow was a closed city, and we knew that we could not map it. But there was an institute in Moscow called the Moscow Institute of Engineers, Geodesy and Cartography. It had many students from socialist countries. There were Hungarians among them, Hungarians led by an old spy, Rakosi. He assigned every Hungarian the task of mapping a small block. As a result, in the late 70s, a beautiful map of Moscow was released in Budapest, which was much more accurate than any maps in Moscow. The Hungarian students did a great job of it, without any distortions or mistakes. You know, honestly, when I was going to today's interview, I'd been thinking that cartographers were fairly boring people who just draw something and so on. We're not boring. Mostly not boring. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Я тоже. Спасибо.